Hi, today on Tales from the Whisk Cam, we're going to teach you how to make a great tart dough. It's a dough basically made out of flour, powdered sugar, an egg yolk, some salt, and butter. It's excellent for tarts and pies. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with 1.5 cups of flour. We're going to add 6 tablespoons of powdered sugar and 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. We're going to grab our whisk and just make sure it's all very well incorporated. Now we're going to add 10 tablespoons of unsalted butter. That comes out to about 5 ounces, or a stick and 1/4 of butter. Make sure your butter is really, really cold. So after you cut it, put it back in a bowl and stick it in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes. You want to make sure the butter is fairly cold. So we're going to add that. And this is one of those recipes where you're really going to have to use your hands. So we just start tossing the butter in and start pressing it in between your fingers with the flour. And what you're trying to do is really get all that butter and all that flour mixed very well together, because that's what gives your tart dough a really nice flaky consistency. So I don't know if you can really tell, so what we're doing is just grabbing the butter and just pushing it against our fingers with the flour. And what you're doing is you're coating all that flour with butter. This, you don't really want to overwork it, but you do want to make sure all that butter is really massaged into the flour, as they say. So this should take you about 5 to 7 minutes. We're just going to massage it in. I find this process actually to be very relaxing. You want to make sure you have no big clumps of butter. Really dig your hands in there, get them in really good. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Great, so it looks like we got most of our butter already really worked into the flour. As you can see, you'll have these little pieces that kind of look like little butter flakes that are coated with flour. And what that is going to do is once the dough is rested and chilled, when you roll it out, you'll get these very small thin layers of butter, flour. And then when you cook it, what makes the pastry flaky is the actual water that's inside the butter. The butter will start to melt and it will release steam, and then the steam gets caught in between those little layers of flour, and that's what gives you a very nice flaky crust. So it looks like we've got it all worked in. As you can see, there's little pieces or little flakes of butter, as I like to call them. And now what we're going to do, in the center of our flour and butter mix, we're going to add 1 egg that's been beaten. Make sure your egg is at room temperature. And then with one hand, we're just going to start mixing it in. Now it's very important that you don't overmix or overwork the flour, because then you're going to end up with a very stiff and tough dough that's just not going to be appetizing. So what I'm doing here is with the heel of my hand, I'm just kind of pressing everything together. And at first it'll look like there's not enough moisture with the egg, but as you can see, we're just kind of pushing it all together, trying not to really overwork it. You want to do this in as little amount of time as possible. There. There we go. Let's clean this off of our hands. And I know it looks really messy, but as I said, don't ever be afraid to get your hands dirty. That's kind of the best way to cook. So here we have our dough. We're going to shape it into a rough little patty. And then this is ready to be chilled. And I recommend that you, what we like to do here is put it in a little Ziploc bag. There. And now this is ready to be chilled. I would chill it for about an hour. It really depends on how hot it is outside the day you're working on making your tart dough. Just put it in for about an hour in the refrigerator, the coldest part of your refrigerator, and then it'll be ready to roll out. You can also make this in advance. Make sure you label it and date it and put it in the freezer. And I would say it'd be good for up to about a week. If you're going to use it from the freezer, let it sit at room temperature for about 5 to 10 minutes. It becomes a lot easier to work with. That is how you make tart dough.